Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is I, your Peter Zahan says there's no way for us to win. We'll get that. We'll get to that. It is I, Scott, the proprietor of the Future Conflict channel. Today's Council of Future Conflict is episode, what are we, 436. Very decidedly World War II looking thumbnail today because, I'll be honest with you. I think in the near future, we'll be looking back on the Ukrainian war and remembering it fondly. All these valiant efforts on the Eastern Front by the NAFO bros as they huddled in their trenches, hurling, all kinds of invective across the lines. But unfortunately, guys, it's looking like Russia has got the upper hand, at least right now. I mean, who knows? You could have a million new Ukrainians come out of the birthing pods and, reinvigorate the fight. But you never know. It's not looking good right now, especially once the North Koreans, which, are probably about equivalent to bottom tier Russian Wagner conscripts. Who knows if they'll make a difference. But so we're talking about Russia's winning the war today, and then we've got election stuff. There's some heat occurring in the election. Some of it is fratricide on the left side, so we'll be talking a little bit about that.
And some of it is incendiary devices.
We've got the ballot boxes going up in smoke. I'm curious how they're gonna work that one through. Maybe there's just too many, people who are exercising their freedom to vote. Can't have that.
Gosh, guys, we've recreated the votes that were in there, and it turns out in that one ballot box was 475,000 votes, all for Kamala. Crazy.
All for Kamala, right? Yeah. So we're just gonna magically recreate those votes and drop them in at 1 a.m. after we've tabulated Trump's win. We'll just get us 5% over where we need to be. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to kind of watch the election as we're in the final stretch here, gentlemen. So normally, Joe, you're sitting in your place, in your comfy air-conditioned abode there in Montana, but today you're on the road. No,
I am somewhere in Missouri, headed towards Tennessee, where we'll be teaching a fieldcraft class this weekend to a bunch of good folks. I think about half of my class is the Clark family, which that's okay. I'm down with that. And I've got some folks coming to help out. Some of them might be in the chat now. So we're have a good time.
Yeah, I was actually DMing with somebody who's going to be attending your class. So it's very cool to get excited about that kind of stuff. You get to like we've been saying for so long, Joe, you get to kind of extend your real world network, but it's also, learning new stuff is fun, right? Especially if
it's going to be pretty awesome, especially as we're coming into a very turbulent time. And I'll be honest, as an indicator of where people's minds are, I'm already over capacity on the community security operations class in 2 weeks down in Missouri. But I'm willing to accept a couple more people just so we get everyone trained before the skills might be needed. Yeah. So check that out.
Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 said, and NAFO's still saying every loss is part of the plan. Well, the NAFO bros remind me an awful lot of the Q folks, like trust the plan, right? So, yeah.
I was making up a song as I was driving along earlier. NAFO bros, oh, why don't you know? There's more. It'll get there.
I can't believe you're making me do this, Scott.
But Hold on a second.
No. Let me unfortunately
NAFO
defend.
bros rhymes with Joe's toes. So I'm just saying.
Uh-oh.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Watcher. Go ahead.
Well, let me, shoot, let me remember what I was going to say. Hold on.
You're going to defend something that Joe said, or
well, let me take a position that I can't believe you're making me do, but let me defend the poor Q-ites against that horrible assault. See, at least the poor Q-tards, didn't ever admit that the plan was them laying down in a ditch getting shot.
Well, let's be a little charitable to the Q folks, because I will say that most Q folks are generally well-meaning people. They just got led down the wrong path by something that was, it's,
Exactly.
we are generally on the right, in the right of American society. We are generally Christian people. Christian people understand that sometimes you just got to have faith, right? But unfortunately, when it comes to worldly political things, faith is something that you can't.
Let me just say,
you can't have.
To the Q people listening, since you always fill my DMs over things I didn't say, I also didn't say any of that. That was the two of them. Please do not bombard my DMs.
No,
I didn't say it.
And remember,
it was them.
The two of us are technically on your side here. We're saying that at least you're not as bad as the NAFO bros, because again, the NAFO bros are now admitting that the plan is for them to lay down in a ditch and be shot. So,
yeah,
trust the plan, I guess.
Well, but code name trench for ditch, right? So I mean, it's just. Anyway, so we're going to be talking a little bit. Speaking of NAFO bros, we're going to be talking a little bit about Russia and the Ukraine war later in the show. So that should be interesting. It's always kind of nice to touch in on that. It's interesting to see. There's been a lot of speculation. I'll be honest with you. I'm not talking too much about the North Korea soldiers because I haven't seen a lot of real information about them come out. So when we see more information about that, we'll talk about it. But ultimately, that's it. There's a lot of speculation going on, guys, in the Korean media about like how the North Korea is going to be exporting experience back to their army, right? So even if they lose 80% of their soldiers over there, the 20% that come back will pass a lot of knowledge. Now, that's true. I think that is true.
Yeah,
that being said,
I think that's probably the overarching goal, right? To get a combat experienced NCO Corps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but the problem with that, Joe, is that you're learning the wrong lessons, right? The things that are working. Joe, do you have a night course for tactical spooning? Mr. Scott, J87 for $2 asks.
Boy, that's a very expensive course.
They're going to get the knife part first.
It comes as part. It comes as part of the bayonet package. Yeah, I mean it's. All right. I mean that worked. That worked well for you, I think, Joe. The bayonet package. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. So, yes, today we will be talking Russia's update, and we will be talking a little bit of Ukraine war update, and we'll be talking domestic politics. But I have some I think they're interesting, odds and ends in the meantime. Anything else, Watcher, before we jump right into it?
Now that I know of, let's get going.
All righty here. So I don't know if you guys know this. If you can, Joe, I know you got your phone. Probably you can't see this, but Watcher, you could probably see your phone. This is the face of a man who is not happy about his new promotion. This guy is like saying, "Wait, what? Oh, no.
He looks a little concerned.
I got a COVID or something." So And if you're
Like,
wondering
no,
why,
the other guy has Ibn Sayed in his name. Mine is Sayed Ibn, not me.
yeah, you got the wrong guy. Yeah. If you're wondering why this guy's not happy about his new job, Hezbollah names new leader to replace Nasrallah. Here's what we know about him. So this is a CNN World article, and this is a very worried leader right now.
Do you
Guys,
think maybe they're legit picking guys they don't like at this point? Like just like, hey, that guy's an asshole. Vote for him.
Well, here's what I want to know.
He said, "What's the 401k like?" And they're like, "Does it matter?"
Yeah, does it matter? I mean, well, you're gonna as long as your 401k's in like a gold or like Nvidia, you might see some growth before you have to cash out for your family. But,
no, my point is he's going to die before he ever gets it.
I know. I'm just saying those are the only things growing fast enough to get any returns in the time he has left. It's not a terrible joke, but it's not great either. So, I mean, I'm just, this is the Gen Squad. So this is where they're going to say that when he's dead a week from now, they're going to say that Israel unleashed their genies, their tamed genies on him.
I just have to say that I don't know that we don't know he's not already dead. Just saying.
Well, I would guess that they would only nominate somebody that could guarantee proof of life, so they could at least get like one or two, videos out of him before he meets his great reward. Peter Shays Helicopter Tours for $2 says Benning May 2011 they got rid of the bayonet training.
That's the Army for you. Marines are always going to do bayonet training. That's just the way they are.
Well, in fairness, I mean, like all of my training in the 2000s, we had what makes the green grass grow kind of training. So it was that must be
in all honesty,
recent.
Even if you never use your bayonet in combat, bayonet training builds aggressiveness and warrior spirit.
Yeah, just like hand-to-hand training, right? Pugil assist is a perfect example of the kind of thing that all soldiers and Marines should have to go through. I mean, you're never going to use pugil sticks out there in combat, but there is an analog directly between pugil sticks and bayonet, and it's always good to
hold on. When everyone picks up Volume 2 of the Mongol Moon Anthology, you will see bayoneting and pugil stick action in combat. Because a pugil stick is nothing more than a butt stroke, my friend. So,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a direct analog, right, to like the kind of things the moves that you learned. I mean, that was the whole reason we did pugil sticks, because we were doing bayonet training. And, that allowed you to kind of do it, man on man at full speed. So anyway, so let's talk a little bit about Hezbollah's new leader. So he's a former deputy. They're saying the reason he's sad here in this picture is because he's at a funeral for slain Hezbollah members. Well, if he lives more than a week, he's going to continue to go to a lot more funerals, because Israel is swacking Hezbollah members by the bushel load. And yeah, this is exactly what I would expect. Let's find out more about this guy. Hezbollah has named Shiite cleric Naim Qasim as leader over a month after his predecessor Hassan Nasrallah was killed. Now, they already had two other guys in the meantime. So we basically real quick, what's the going odds on how long this guy survives? Watcher bottom to top. What's your take?
I mean, I'm not sure that like 30-ish minutes after this announcement, he wasn't already dead, and we just haven't got the body yet.
All right, so you think your money is on already dead?
Fast. Well, my money's on either it has already happened, we just don't have that news yet, or it will happen within the next 24 to 48.
Okay, so you're short term, Joe. What's your pool take?
7 to 9 days. They're learning, right? They're going to get a little bit better at evasion. But here's the thing: Mossad always comes for you. So 7 to 9 days.
I'm going to go with 5 to 6, just to kind of slide right there in the middle. It's a chancy thing, but let's be honest. Watcher could actually be right. I mean, he could literally be dead in the next 24 hours.
I mean, I'd put it to you this way: were I him, I probably wouldn't order a pizza.
Well, so there's a little bit on that to kind of support that here in the story. So let me continue on with this. The group senior counsel elected Qassam as Secretary General. Hezbollah's media office said in a statement on Tuesday, adding that Qassam is committed to Prophet Muhammad's authentic Islam, a core principles of the group.
They tried to page him, but he didn't answer.
Qassam now leads a group once regarded as Iran's most formidable proxy in its conflict with Israel, a force that in recent week has been significantly weakened by Israeli strikes, with top leaders killed, thousands of fighters wounded, and missile capabilities degraded. The group now faces intense Israeli military campaign in southern Lebanon. Listen to this. Responding to the announcement, Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant wrote on X, "Temporary appointment, not for long." I mean,
maybe they could try to get him on the radio. Oh wait, that's not going to work either.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why they're like, well, he didn't say no. He has a job.
Well, so this is a bit of an analysis of why they picked him. It says this guy says he's the deputy director for research at the Malcolm H. Carnegie Middle Eastern Center. He tells CNN the organization was left with little choices in terms of top tier clerics. That Qassam is a known face, and therefore his appointment was a no-brainer choice for the organization.
The answer was it's because when you sit down with him at meals, he chews with his mouth open, and so everybody was ready for him to go.
Yeah. Hashim Saifuddin, thought to have been much stronger contender to succeed Nasrallah, was killed in the Israeli attack on Beirut, along with other commanders. Let's see. This guy is a 71-year-old Shiite cleric. He served 7 consecutive terms as Deputy Secretary General since 1991. He's been around since the beginning of Hezbollah. Before his work with Hezbollah, he took part in the Movement for the Dispossessed, a political group that later morphed into the Shiite Amal movement, a Hezbollah-allied group that is now led by a Speaker of the Lebanese Parliament. So yeah, this guy's been around for a while. And if he's been around that long, he's got blood on his hands, and it's time for him to get on.
I'm old enough to remember when Amal and Hezbollah/Hamas were not allied with each other.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. I wonder if they pick somebody that's aligned with Western institutions like the Carnegie and shit, because they were hoping that might save him.
I don't know that there's any connection between him and Carnegie. The guy who's
the institution the
guy who was commenting, just a commentator, was part of that. Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, he was the one who said that this is a no-brainer because he's been, he's like the only top tier cleric that's left, essentially.
Gotcha.
Alrighty. Just kind of looking through here, see if there's anything else in this story. I don't really see much else in this story that's worth kind of going off of. Let's move on to our next odds and ends, gentlemen. We've been talking about Chinese exercises recently, kind of stirring the pot over here in the. Oh, by the way, gentlemen, remind me after the show. I have something to tell you that I can't tell you on the air, but it's related to this. China's been stirring the pot, with these exercises, and Joint Sword 2024B. So this article basically kind of looks back on this exercise and says, all right, so what does this tell us, right? Because, Joe, we've already talked about this. We kind of gave our analysis on this, but it's interesting now you're starting to see kind of more professional, like, Pacific watchers, China watchers have kind of started to weigh in to see what their takeaways from this exercise are. So I thought this would be interesting to kind of revisit this one now that we've got a little bit of daylight between us in that exercise. Let me share my screen here.
It's still ongoing.
Yeah, but we've seen it though, right? I mean, and we were really looking at that portion that they did 2 weeks ago when they did the surrounding Taiwan. They've kind of moved away from that, if I remember correctly. Let's see. The exercise involved over 125 aircraft, 34 Coast Guard and naval units. Beijing's recent military drills around Taiwan gave us some insight into Xi Jinping's plan for forcing the island's reunification with the PRC. The latest intimidation operation was intended to warn Taipei and its potential supporters that Beijing has the capability and will to isolate the democratically governed island from any external support or assistance. I think this is generally the correct understanding of this. Joe, I mean, what was your kind of takeaway from this whole exercise with the whole? I'll be honest with you. I think it validated our concerns. No.
So I waited. To me, I think that the entire point of it is to show that they can throw up a blockade on short notice. I think the most interesting part was that for the first time ever, they fired artillery towards Taiwan as part of the exercise. That was a direct slap in the face. It was a direct warning to everyone. And then they somehow accidentally uncovered their new either LPD or LHA that is sitting in dry dock, or not in dry dock, sitting at the pier in one of their ports. So I think that's another warning. They don't do things like that accidentally. They're bringing out a whole new class of amphibious assault ships. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, a lot going on there. Let me kind of go a little further on with the story. It says here, for example, the People's Armed Police Coast Guards opening participation indicates China may launch that gambit by declaring a maritime exclusion or quarantine zone around Taiwan. Coast Guard cutters not only circumnavigated the main island of Taiwan, they also patrolled waters off Taiwan's islands just off China's shores. Nor was this the first time the People's Liberation Eastern Theater Command was incorporated, and the Maritime Security Agency patrol craft in its exercise opposite Taiwan 3 times since 2022. 7 of the Coast Guard cutters participated in the latest exercise, and a similar number were active in last summer as well. Additionally, last August, MSA's largest patrol ship, the Type 918, challenged a Taiwan ferry going to the offshore island of Matsu. It did not board the ferry, but demanded that it declare its cargo and destination, and then escorted it outside Taiwan's declared territorial waters. The patrol ship presented an intimidating present for the ferry's crew and passengers. The growing participation of PRC maritime law enforcement units is significant. Yeah, very similar to what we've been seeing going on in the South China Sea against the Philippines Navy and Coast Guard.
That cutter mentioned is the same size as one of our world class, what we call the world class cutter, which is the very large one. That's technically like a destroyer / cruiser size, right? So it's pretty good size.
Well, kind of more frigate size, I think. But yeah, it's essentially like a Navy.
They're bigger than a frigate, but hey, what do I know? It's really significant that ship was particularly used, and that it wanted to make them declare their cargo, because that's kind of practicing exactly those skills. I really think it would be pretty simple for them to do it, but Matsu and Kinmen are the ones that are cut off, and they're over 150 miles from Taiwan, but only 6 and 8 miles respectively from Chinese mainland. Pretty easy to take those two as an opening move.
Yeah, I guess it boils down to, Joe, ultimately what we saw is exactly, this exercise validates all of the things that Jim said, that you said, that I've said, that Stan said, going back to, what was it, the first time we really went in depth on all this stuff was the second episode of the Privy Council, when it was basically nothing but a deep dive in, Taiwan and South China Sea kind of intrigue. So I think it's kind of nice when your opponents does exactly what you say they're going to do.
100%.
Yeah. All right.
Meanwhile, we ran one P8 Poseidon through it in the middle, and then declared ourselves the victors.
All right. Yeah, we God wills it. We're the victors. Anyway, under the mindset, Beijing can argue that any maritime quarantine it declares against Taiwan constitutes a reasonable domestic law enforcement operation authorized under international law. So that's the interesting thing, Joe, is they could actually, instead of saying like, hey, this is a Navy thing, they could just declare it a law enforcement operation, which has different protections and different kind of rules of, for how they can.
Yeah, I believe I mentioned this specifically. I think I mentioned this specifically last Friday when I said, hey, because of even our own rhetoric in the West about one China policy and our actual diplomatic representation is in Beijing, not Taipei, we actually make it easier for China to claim it's a domestic law enforcement action as opposed to an actual blockade of a sovereign nation. We have made it really easy for them to do that, and we continue to remove the obstacles, like removing missile defenses from Guam at the time of the highest tensions with China. We are shooting ourselves in the foot. One has to ask ourselves if we're Tim Walzing it or if we're doing it on purpose.
Yeah. Speaking of
but
Tim
then
Walz,
I repeat myself.
Speaking of Tim Walz and Chinese, involvement, evidently one of the girls that he was hanging around with when he was in China was the daughter of a big time.
Yeah,
Relative
Sparrow School, and you'll learn right where she came from.
Yeah, exactly right. The Feng Fang honeypot didn't start with what's his name. So I just think that the longer he is on the ticket, the more comes out about that. Just absolute piece of work.
Well, I mean, you might say that China likes to get its fangs into people who think like them.
Yeah, right.
By letting them go bang bang. Actually, if you go all the way back to Sun Tzu, you'll see him mention the use of courtesans, which would be what these women are.
Yeah, essentially. All right. Anyway, I just thought this would make a good odds and ends here. Oh, here's a good quote here at the end. Beijing's three warfares doctrine integrates media, public opinion, and legal activities to shape the legal and political environment in its favor, which kind of goes to that kind of law enforcement kind of flavor to the operation. The PRC often positive legal facade to divide its opposition. Go ahead.
Much like when they claimed that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
It's almost like
wrong place. My bad.
Yeah. Let's see. Anyway, they seek to divide their opposition and hide its true intentions. Exposing what's behind the facade is critical to deterring Xi's aggressive plans. This may be the greatest challenge the United States and its allies face in deterring Xi's destabilizing designs in the Western Pacific. Ultimately, in order for us to preserve Taiwan's sovereignty, we're going to have to be willing to get our hands dirty. And that's the problem that I don't think currently there is any.
We don't have the will for it.
Exactly right.
And this is also why China is the largest contributor of forces to peacekeeping operations via the UN around the world. It serves them two purposes. It gives them combat experienced NCOs, and two, it allows them to go to the World Court or the UN and say, but we're the good guys, trademark. Look at the troops we contribute to peacekeeping operations around the world. All we're trying to do here is keep the peace.
Yeah, we're just keeping the peace. This is a law enforcement operation. Nothing to see here. All right, changing course a little bit away from China and the South China Sea to Philadelphia. I mean, because why not? You want to talk about the collapse? Let's talk about Philadelphia. Joe, you've said numerous times that don't look for the collapse because we're already in it, right?
Sell it as a T-shirt.
There are so many things that just never could have happened 10 years ago. Or if they happened 10 years ago, it was very short-lived and it was stopped because law enforcement had a different presence 10 years ago than they do now. And this next story is just an example of this. And there's nothing super special about this incident that's being reported in this, but this is just kind of goes to show you what is out there, and it's happening in your neighborhoods and your cities as well. And it's just a sign of the lawless, world without law we are living in. All you have to do in order to break pretty much any laws you want is to just gather enough people at a location and have them have a complete disregard for the police that show up. Complete lawlessness. Seattle residents concerned with chaos caused by illegal street racing. We've already seen it wreak havoc in cities like Philadelphia. Now illegal street racing is taking over another Democratic-run, Democratic DA-led city. Wow, Joe, it's almost like those Democratic DAs have an effect on how the law enforcement actually...
Well, I've got a question about this. Why is this getting trotted out again now? This has been a problem since Chaz. People got killed on those highway takeovers because of these illegal street races, these exact illegal street races. So they've been going on for at least 4 years. Why are we trotting it out now?
But let's also stop allowing them to control the language. They're not illegal street races. They're street takeovers. There's no racing going on. They drive their cars around in a circle, firing guns in the air. That's not a race. That's dudes shooting at people. And then they break into all the businesses in the corner. They are mini riots, and they happen all across this country every weekend. and there is zero law enforcement response.
Yeah.
That's the key takeaway here.
What it is it's total anarchy, and it's an absolute disregard for any kind of governance that is put out there. And it's absolutely what they want. In order to be an authoritarian, you have to have a threat, right? And this is what they want. They need this to happen in order to go to kind of like step 3, right?
And so far, Philadelphia has arrested exactly 2 people for these street takeovers that happen there every night of the week. 2 white teenagers who happen to be caught on camera, stealing from a store. Because they were the 2 that didn't, or that fed the narrative they wanted, right? That it's not who you think it is, it's someone else, and that's completely false.
Hey man, so somebody's asking, wasn't drag racing the bane of teen culture in the 50s? Listen, man, drag racing's one thing. At least on drag racing, there's like a designated race area. What they're doing is ripping donuts in the middle of intersections while people crowd around them until they start hitting people. That's legitimately when it's a pattern that happens over and over and over again. They go in circles round and round and round until someone gets hit, and then everyone scatters.
Yeah, well, the other thing too is with street racers, they generally don't want anybody to know about where they're doing it. It's literally like 5 guys in the middle of nowhere, right?
Correct. And it is usually particularly rural tracks, because that's where you get the real switchbacks and stuff.
Well, no, not the drag races is what I'm talking about. They want straight shot.
Drag racing, yeah.
Yeah,
I thought you meant like modern street racing, because like modern street racing, even in California, nobody wanted to street race in the middle of LA. They were trying to go out to like the switchbacks out in San Bernardino Mountains and stuff.
Oh, well, that's all the drifting, right? That's like more of a different thing. But yeah, absolutely right. Though, I mean, you can't have a lot of people at the start and finish line for street racing, right? That's why Joe is actually absolutely right. These are street takeovers. They are civil annoyances, right? They just do donuts and burnouts and things like that. Now, let's be honest. People did.
Meanwhile, though, they're also they're covering up something by talking about the racing in the cars. They're also breaking into every business in that intersection and looting it.
Right.
That's happening in about 90% of the incidents.
And on the best side of that, Joe, it's just graffiti, right? It's broken windows and graffiti on the good side. On the bad side, they're looted and potentially even burnt out, right? The other thing is, so like this kind of stuff is not totally new. I mean, when I was younger, we had this kind of stuff, but here's how it was different. It happened in a parking lot, right? It happened, and it generally never lasted very long because the cops would show up, and as long as there wasn't like open alcohol or fighting or anything like that, they would let some people do burnouts, and it was just cruising, right? It was the whole kind of cruising culture. But as soon as there was any kind of critical mass or whatever, the cops would turn their lights on and everybody would go to either to the next spot or go home, right? And there was no violence. It was generally kids just wanted to congregate, right?
This is a very different thing because they're targeting specific businesses for where they do these things, because the point of it is to use this as cover to do looting so that nobody goes, oh my God, they're looting.
Yeah. Street racing's always been big. This is not street racing. This is something completely different. All right. Let's read
street racers are generally not armed with rifles like we're seeing in these.
Yeah.
Right? The Draco was not a street racer implement in those days.
You gotta admit, though, that video of that girl hanging out that window with the Draco was pretty badass.
Yeah, but that wasn't actually from one of these kind of events. That was an actual gang gunfight. So totally different.
But I just it was still pretty cool. All right, the Seattle police are seeking drivers involved in 2 weekend street takeovers that caused traffic jams and alarmed nearby residents and workers. Oh, that's the other thing too. They do it during periods of time where you absolutely snarl traffic, and it's almost like they use the traffic jams as cover, right? It keeps the police from being able to get at them. Resident let's see. A local resident said felt like chaos and something that you see at a frat party. 10 fireworks I saw. Multiple were thrown at these are fireworks were thrown at cop cars directly. It's kind of when cops back another block. It was really loud between that. So yeah, instead of arresting the people that are throwing fireworks, the cops just back away and have no idea who did it. And invariably, they just look for they look at the videos afterwards and look at the license plates and things like that in order to try to arrest people. And even then, like you said, Joe, they're not arresting people; they're just ticketing them for the most part. About 100 to 150 people were out there with cars, essentially drag racing, doing donuts, kind of complete lawlessness, really. He also described the early Sunday street takeover outside the apartment at 3rd Avenue and Clay Street. This is in Seattle. Around 1 a.m., he saw people blocking the intersection with lime scooters and orange cones. I knew those lime scooters were up to no good. We see things on Friday nights, but you don't expect this kind of thing. We are very nervous. So someone who's going to get hit by a car just when the mass of people out there with these cars just spinning around. Yeah, and Joe, we've seen numerous footage of people getting just body slammed by these cars. They get thrown
through the air. Yeah.
Ammo's currency for $5 says working road construction in Seattle. A lot of us wear plates now. People still tell me Seattle isn't that bad. Ice cream is locked up. Yeah, I mean Seattle's been bad for a long time. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and the liberal policies keep the police officers from wanting to intervene, because why would I risk reprimand and a write-up and a suspension by actually getting out and trying to do my job? It's better to just say I had another call to go on, or make a random traffic stop on my way to that call so I don't actually have to go to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So talking about the liberal policies, here's the mayor's, here's a statement from the mayor's office. Mayor Harrell believes it's critical that we work to prevent this behavior and hold offenders accountable using all tools available, including law enforcement efforts, new safety technologies, and legislation recently passed by the city council. We defer to the SPD on specifics of these particular events and law enforcement tactics. Of course you do.
So
there it is. New safety technologies.
Yeah.
In other words, surveillance state. More cameras, more surveillance, but it's not really going to target these people.
Vehicle GPS, data logging, all that kind of stuff.
Interestingly, I'm shocked that the article nor us had brought up the other weird contributing factor to this that's happened in conjunction with this that's largely made a lot of this possible. Kia boys.
Oh yeah, with the
a lot of these vehicles are not the owner's vehicles. They are stolen explicitly for the purpose of being able to do this kind of shit and wreck them in the course of doing it without having to worry about paying for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hunch Dirty Roofer for $5 says, I wonder what other crimes or burglaries are happening on the other side of the city. These sound like a diversion or draw resources away. Just saying, in the old days, I would have agreed with you, because in the old days, a lot of cops would have shown up. But nowadays, it's like 3 or 4 units show up, and they like it says in the story, they just kind of back away when they get stuff thrown at them. Joe, I mean, that's another thing that's kind of crazy. They more just manage these, things and observe them versus actually stepping in to try to break them up or stop them, which is that's kind of the point of cops, right? When illegal
but they've been effectively defanged, right? And gone to like being the mall cops, observe and report, right? And here's what's funny is they say, we took down X number of license plates and our detectives will follow up. Only the detectives won't follow up because they know that it's not going to go anywhere. So what's the purpose?
Hey, real quick, I missed a super chat over on Rumble. PA Grunt or Pa Grunt for $10 said, catch the replay. We third shift morons have to sleep sometime. Thanks for the content. Hey, I know the feeling, man. I literally go to bed right after the show, and I am beat. I'm waking up at like 5 in the morning and then going to bed at like 1:30 in the morning is it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for sleep. All right. Sorry, I didn't have my Rumble chat popped out.
Did we also catch there was a couple of $5 super chats? I'm not sure if we got or not.
I think I got all the $5 ones.
Okay.
Yeah, Hunch and Ammo was currency the last two, and I got both of those. All right, let me get rid of that. Joe, see, you're driving to a class. You got something going down. You want to tell the people about what's been going on with Tactical Wisdom lately?
Well, we are in the midst of writing a book, so sometimes the articles slip through. We're working on book 6. That'll be out. No, I will not tell you the topic. But it will be out before Christmas and ready to go. And we have some fiction work that we've been working on. The short story has led to requests from the publisher to maybe do some more fiction. So we will see how that goes. And quite honestly, with the move, I've been kind of falling behind on getting out good content on both locals and on tactical-wisdom.com. But last week we put out a bunch of articles on both, so check those out. And we have been keeping up pretty well on the intelligence analysis over on locals. You might see a lot of stories on locals you won't find anywhere else, or you'll get them a good 12 to 18 hours before they end up in the mainstream media. So pay attention over there. I put out my non-public stuff over there. Sign up over there as a subscriber if you haven't already. It's only $5 a month, cheaper than Shelby and better information. So get on over there and check it out. I'm just kidding. Everybody knows I love Mike. Mike's a good dude. But it's a good supplement. So
Joe, I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't let you know that Chad is speculating on various titles, and you would not approve.
Yeah, I know. Everyone thinks they're funny, and they're funny to a point, and then they're kind of like they don't realize they're being a little bit insulting. But that's okay. It's not their fault. They don't know. Forgive them, Lord. They know not what they do. But anyway, we're going to run a fieldcraft class this weekend. That's going to be a lot of fun, getting out in the woods, getting dirty and muddy, and learning some outdoor skills and how to read a map and compass and build all kinds of cool shelters with nothing more than a penknife, a duct tape, and some starter fluid, just like MacGyver. So it's going to be a good time. And then 2 weeks after that, we've got community security class where we learn to protect a neighborhood or whatever you have from the marauding bands of vandals that are going to be out there in the wild. So come take a class. We also have a knife class coming up in January at Camp Ponderosa, which will be followed immediately by Ground Rod 2 by Kay. So lots of good stuff going on. Watch for lots more classes at Camp Ponderosa.
Yeah, very good. I think Camp Ponderosa is a great facility. So I know it's harder for people to get there, but still, it's just one of those kind of things that if you can get out there, it's worth going to.
The juice is certainly worth the squeeze. Come on out.
Amen, brother. All right. No, I'm just going to remind you. I'm hoping to see in my inbox in the near future some of your fiction. I'd love to give it a read. Short fiction's
right. I knew I was supposed to send that to someone, and it was you. I will get that over to you. Maybe after I do the edits that Wargate asked me to do, then I'll send it over. So
there you go.
And as a guy who doesn't make a ton of money, but who wants to go to all of these darn classes, I will say that if you ever needed inspiration for a reason to better self, take an extra shift, figure out a way to take a side gig or something to make some extra cash, I think some of these, like the Ground Rod class and some of Joe's community security classes, are definitely motivating me to make some extra money.
Yeah, it's always cool to kind of find something like you want enough to be able to be, it's to motivate you to do better in whatever it is you already do. Right. So,
Yeah, Watcher got the behind-the-scenes look at it because he filmed a good chunk of a community security operations course. Just good content, man. It really is.
It's excellent content. Once it's color corrected, you guys, we're going to be using it for we're going to cut a 30-second commercial for here. It's going to be nice.
All right. Rumble chat. I think I got him. All right. There we go. I don't ignore you guys. But I can't look at everything. So I appreciate you. All right, moving on with our first main topic of the day. The Russians are winning.
Hold on, Scott. You missed the opportunity to say, ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
I know. I kind of did that with the post I did there, but I'm typing and talking at the same time, so forgive me. All right. So the Russians are winning. And how do we know this, right? Well, first of all, they're gaining ground in the Donbass consistently. They've also pretty much completely contained the Kursk incursion by the Ukrainians. Ukrainians have taken some significant casualties in that region, which is something a little different than what we initially saw. So it's kind of a stalemate in that area. So when you've stalemated in one area, but you're gaining,
if you want an indicator, of how true Scott's statement is, look at the media. They were banging the drum about how great the Kursk incursion was, and they have said zero about it for 3 weeks.
Yep, that's exactly right. If they were continuing to press there, they would talk about the gains that Ukraine is making in the Kursk region on Russia's own home turf, no less, is how they would. So this is the reason. This is one of the reasons why you're seeing this story kind of being promulgated pretty heavily in the media in the last 24 hours. Russian Special Forces Academy in Chechnya hit by drone attack. Drone slammed into a building and campus in Chechnya known as the Russian Special Forces University. In the early morning hours of Tuesday, Regional Governor Ramzan Kadyrov has confirmed at 6:30 in the morning, the roof of an empty building on the territory of the Russian Special Forces. Let's be honest, it was empty because it's 6:30 in the morning, not because they weren't using it for anything else. Caught fire in Gudermes as a result of a unmanned aerial attack. The town, which hosts the military school, lies just 20 miles east of the capital of Grozny. No one was killed or injured. The fire has been extinguished, Kadyrov said in a detailed statement posted to Telegram. He claimed that the attack didn't lead to a significant disruption at the academy. However, it seems doubtful given the photographs showing the extent of the fires. Yeah, it looks like this roof really, there was some fairly extensive damage to this building. And it looks like maybe some sort of like an exposition center. So maybe it's just only being really used for kind of like military shows and events and things like that. But still, it's a pretty big building to lose.
Probably not hard to find a guy in Chechnya who dislikes the Russians. You slip him $50 US, he's willing to put a drone in the air.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence one way or the other that this came from either Ukraine or it's a kind of a local agent launch drone from either Georgia, and let's be honest, it's easier to find people who hate the Russians in Georgia than it is in Chechnya, at least given recent things. But there have been some Muslim extremists operating in Chechnya recently that have had a anti-Russian bent as well. So it is absolutely,
or Dagestan or Georgia or any of these places that completely surround there.
Let's see. Going on further, the institution is only known for being the only private campus for training Russian special military operators, but tens of thousands have been sent through the elite training program. The school's website says it instructs both soldiers and civilians, and more than 47,000 troops have deployed to the front lines in Ukraine have been trained there. Let's see, kind of going on.
Can I point something out here?
Yeah, go ahead.
The same media that calls the Russians a bunch of bumbling Keystone Cops idiots also thinks the Russians have a training school that turns out elite soldiers. It's one or the other. It can't be both.
Right. Yeah, right. Good point. Kind of going on, it says he did not say whether he believed the drone had been launched from Ukraine, noting only that the police were investigating the incident. The report said in reference to Kadyrov's statement, Chechnya is located around 600 kilometers southeast of the border with Ukraine. So that would be a pretty long stretch for a drone to make, even if it were to fly mostly over Georgia, which would be safer than flying over Russia. However, there's been an emerging reporting consensus that it was the result of a Ukrainian attack and not the result of a recent tensions amongst rival Russian factions in the South Caucasus region. Ukraine has frequently struck Russia with drones in the course of the war, but
hold on. That's an interesting turn of phrase.
Yeah.
Rival Russian factions in that region. Oh, you mean like the Chechens, the Dagestanis, and the Russians who have been fighting for 20 years?
Right.
Those are not rival Russian factions. Call it Chechen or Russian and see what happens to you. Anyway.
Well, Kadyrov is clearly thinks that it's the Ukrainians. He says they have bitten us. We will destroy them. In the very near future, we will show them the kind of vengeance they have never dreamed of. And I wonder
for all of the rubles he gets in his pocket every month, he does not call himself a Russian. So saying it was rival Russian factions is a weird turn of phrase is all.
Well, I wonder if that is a particularly unenlightened reporter who just recognizes the fact that Chechnya, Dagestan, and all these other kind of portions where all this stuff, these Caucasus, republics are all within the polity of Russia. So theoretically,
well, that's why it's called the Russian Federation and not Russia. Russia is part of the Russian Federation, which includes these other places. I know that it seems like I'm being pedantic here, but it matters to the people who live there.
Yeah.
No, we're not Russians, but we are part of the Russian Federation, right?
Yeah, and that being said, I think it's just based on the target itself, Joe. My thoughts is it's probably either Ukrainians or somebody that has been paid or supported directly by the Ukrainians. Now that is, we've seen Ukraine operating pretty far afield in Africa, and they are not above using other, non-Ukrainian organizations to attack Russian assets outside of.
That also includes that world famous Ukrainian organization, the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it, right? The further away from the battle zone and from Russia and Ukraine, the easier it is for the CIA basically to support a handful of maybe, Ukrainian special operators to do things that Ukrainian special operators shouldn't have the ability to do because they just don't have the ability.
Apparently, Ukrainian special operators operated from an American amphibious group when shutting down Nord Stream. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to say that.
Wait a second, Joe. You're being very charitive. I don't think any Ukrainians were involved at all. I think that were all
right.
If by Ukrainian you mean Englishmen who are, retired SAS guys or something like that. Anyway, so I just thought this was an interesting one, and I thought we could kind of kick off our Russian coverage of this. Bottom line up front, Ukrainian-backed people have, got a pound of flesh from the Chechens. So this is very interesting. Joe, we've been critical of the Chechens as they look great when they're fighting, but invariably they're always shooting off camera, and you never see any of the TikTok warriors actually fighting anybody. So I don't know that.
While that's very true, that's true, but I don't know that I would exactly seek out confrontation with Chechens. It doesn't usually go well.
I agree. But that being said, I can absolutely see.
And for the record,
go ahead.
yes, yeah, totally. But I'll also point out that they got 0 pounds of flesh. They got some pounds of concrete and maybe some sheetrock.
Right.
But there are no casualties.
It's more of a symbolic political kind of target versus an actual enemy, center of mass kind of target.
Target of opportunity.
And therefore was a waste of a strategic resource.
There was another story. Let's see. I'm gonna find it here. I thought I had pulled it, but I didn't. There's another one. Speaking of people using people not from their country to do things. There's a kind of a complementary story there. Joe, let me ask you this. I mean, I kind of intimated that the Chechens had been kind of more rock stars, especially in the early days. That being said, you rightly bring up the point that those guys actually have some serious chops when it comes to counterinsurgency work, and some actual real combat experience in Dagestan and other, and honestly within Chechnya too.
And Kazakhstan. Remember, they put down the rebellion in Kazakhstan in rapid order, right? I think a matter of 72 hours, they restored that country to order. So, and that was the bulk of that force was Chechen forces. Russians were there holding the air bases, but the Chechens went out and did the work. So they do have some pretty good skills. And I will tell you that as far as private military companies go, Chechens have them that serve both sides. And our fighting guys have encountered Chechens on both sides, allies and enemies throughout the region, right? From Syria all the way across into Uzbekistan and Afghanistan. So
even going
they're out there.
Even going back to the original fighting in 2014, you had Chechens on both sides of the conflict, right? You had the Ruskavardi forces that were being it was easy to send them because they weren't Russian, so it's kind of like saying, oh, well, they're just kind of volunteers from someplace else. They're not the Russians sending them. So there's some deniability, right? But then on the other side of it, you had veterans, it was recently enough to where you had veterans of the Kavkaz kind of republic or whatever they called it, that were fighting in the early 2000s, and they kind of coalesced in that area. A lot of them were hanging out in Georgia, but then they moved to Ukraine and then started fighting against Russia, right? They're kind of like the anti-Russian Chechens. So this story is interesting, guys, because
that also happened in northern Syria, where you had Chechens on both sides of the lines, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, pretty much anytime you've got Al Qaeda or any of these Salafist, groups, you're going to have some number of Chechens involved. I mean, hell, in Iraq, I remember hearing about, there's always Chechen snipers were like the good snipers, right? They were the Iraqi, or not the Iraqi, but they were the Al Qaeda guys that were they wanted to, basically put scalps on their wall.
Trivia note: the last combat kill with the M24 rifle was a Chechen, and we know who took the shot. So anyway.
4 saboteurs, allegedly including an American, killed trying to infiltrate Russia. And this has come from a Kremlin statement, so take that with a grain of salt. But I think there's an image that comes up here that's pretty telling. Russian is alleging that a group of foreign military saboteurs have been killed trying to breach and attack Russian territory with Western-supplied weapons. The country's Federal Security Service, or the FSB, has presented what is called clear evidence that the heavily armed infiltrators into Russia's Bryansk region were foreign fighters from nations including the United States, Canada, and Poland. FSB border guards, together with units of the Russian Armed Forces and the National Guard, thwarted an attempt to cross over the Russian state border in the Klimovsky district on October 27th. The Russian law enforcement body stated. It said that there were 4 eliminated saboteurs who were not Ukrainian and possessed explosive devices, along with foreign equipment and weapons. So anyway, we've got this this video here. Let me.
Not Ukrainian covers a whole lot of ground. I mean, they could have been Russians. When they said the 4 killed were not Ukrainian, well, they could have been anything. They could have been Russians.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna see some heavily redacted imagery here that you know. So you got a saw right here. So you got an AT4. You've got I don't know what this is. This is the smaller one. This is not an AT4. Spare barrels for the saw. You got a M4 style or AR platform rifle. Dead guys with boots here. A lot of PMags in here. Other AR style magazines. I'd love to have a saw, man. That weapon was like the most fun weapon to shoot. Grenades. This is where they start getting it. So here's all their gear. This is, you've got ORHD negative. So that's their blood type. Actual multicam stuff, not the fakes. So pretty decent gear there, actually. I think these are actual like ESAPI style side plates that they've got there. Yeah, all decent gear. One of the guy had a cry vest on. So they start showing. So this is a Polish prayer book that, and they show, like, here's the Polish language. So clearly one of these guys was a Pole, probably. And they start showing dead guys here. So there's a dead guy, and the one I want to see. Yeah. So this is weird. The Canadian, they saw the 2 large Canadian flags, which I thought was kind of weird. And then this one, this is the alleged American. And he's got a second Ranger bat tattoo. And this is I don't know, anybody who's been around like Fort Benning for sure any length of time, or around Ranger regiments, these tattoos are pretty damn common. And it doesn't surprise me that a Iraq or Afghan veteran would show up in a place like this. Any thoughts on second Ranger bat tattoo dude just kind of sneaking into Russia?
I mean, that certainly doesn't confirm any sort of U.S. government involvement.
Oh, 100%.
Although it's probably true, it doesn't mean it. But we've already seen second Mardiv guys there. We've seen wherever Civdiv failed out of guys there, and all kinds of others. So,
in fairness, it's very easy that these guys are essentially fall on hard times, or maybe they really feel passionate about the Ukrainian cause, and they are just decided to go fight for Ukraine, right? This is that whole foreign legion concept.
The Ukrainian Legion is a thing, right? It is. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, anyway, I thought this is interesting. I mean, we are living in a time when Americans fighting under a foreign flag are infiltrating Russia.
This is my monthly reminder. There's still a Canadian 3-star general in Russian custody.
But he was on leave, right?
Oh no, he was being separated while he was on leave and dragged out of a bunker in Mariupol.
Yeah. Well, anyway, pray for these guys. It's just kind of sad to see, I guess, but it doesn't surprise me ultimately. Hey, Watcher's back.
Well, look, it's war, right? If you sign up for that, that's what you sign up for.
Exactly right. I mean, it's kind of like, I hate to say it, when you go fight in somebody else's war, win stupid prizes, kind of thing. Like I don't. Yeah, all right, never mind. Would rather have a PKM, but a saw would be awesome. I don't know, man. If it depends on what you're using it for, right? I don't know that I want to chunk a PKM around through the woods, but ultimately that 7.62 round
PKM and RPK every day.
The only thing that I would say about a saw is that commonality of ammo with M4s, and then that thing is so controllable, right? But the problem, if there is a problem with a saw, it's the round it's shooting. You're basically capped out at about 600 meters, and you just don't have that kind of power that you have with any 7.62, whether it's NATO or 54. Though, Joe, I did hear a anecdote thing recently about this new they're replacing the M4s with this new SIG rifle, and they also made a James
in limited numbers and in very special units.
Hold on a second. Let me address both of those. Let me get James here first. So PKM is lighter than a 240, which is essentially the American equivalent of the PKM, but it's they're not exactly the same. The PKM was designed to be light, right, with stampings and things like that, whereas the 240 is a pretty beefy gun. It's more of a medium machine gun than a light machine gun, whereas a PKM is definitely kind of more in the light machine gun category. Joe, no, so here's my understanding of the distribution of those weapons going forward in the U.S. Army is going to be infantry forces, some Cav scouts, engineers like combat engineers that are in infantry formations, right? And that's where they're really going to be doing the majority of those fieldings. The rest of the Army will continue to have M4s, right? And then, and in addition,
along with the entire United States Marine Corps.
Right. But the Marine Corps has those HK rifles essentially, though. So it's not the
416, but it's still an M4. I mean,
it's still an M4, right. But so the light machine gun, right? That SIG has also won the contract for the light machine gun. Shoots the exact same round as the AR platform SIG gun. And they're saying that round out of a machine gun platform the machine gun is more stable than a saw, which is freaking stable, right? And they're getting better terminal ballistic performance at range, like at 800 meters, a kilometer down range than they are, or a similar performance what you would get with 7.62. So I guess maybe I've just read in some of the trade literature, there's talks that they may replace the 240s in the infantry platoons with this.
Keep in mind, those are advertising materials, right?
No.
I mean, God forbid. Hold on. God forbid, procurement officers and agents of a company trying to sell things to the U.S. government lie about the numbers. I mean,
so
wow.
No, this is what's come out of user testing out of the 101st. Out of the 101st.
Shock and disbelief.
How does that change what I just said?
That it was the TTPs that the units are making themselves, not the advertisers, not SIG. This isn't SIG saying this. This is like, hey, this thing is doing better than we expected, and we may field it in a different way.
Did you, as an infantry officer, do a lot of terminal ballistics testing?
No infantry officer does that. That's why we have.
Well, you just said they did.
No. What I'm saying is that we have small arms master gunners at the battalion level that do all of that.
Huh. Yeah, the Army's way better off than the Marine Corps because we don't.
Yeah, that's just it, right? That's something when I was in the infantry, we didn't have those. That's a kind of one of those lessons learned when you're doing a lot of small arms gunnery, you got to get a lot smarter with how you're employing small arms, I guess. So if we learned one thing in the GWAT, that was that's one of those things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fanboy for SIG. You can. I'm not going.
I'm not fanboying for SIG. I'm saying that they are learning things in the fielding of this and they are pleasantly surprised. The 249 had 7. Yeah. So the Mark 48 is basically a saw with 7.62, and those were really we had 249s. Yeah, that was, like I said, the saw was my favorite weapon to shoot. Honestly, that was great. Sorry, I'm just kind of catching up on the chat a little bit here. A lot of gun nerd stuff. Sorry, I'm nerding out on this gun stuff, but anyway. Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 says, since when don't anyone cook the numbers? Yeah, people always cook the numbers. And this, which is exactly why Joe is 100% correct. You never believe what the people who sell the gun say. You believe what the actual soldiers who, once they get it in their hands, because that's how you learn all the BS. Fanboy of the piece 226. What, Joe? Have you shot the old school SIG pistols much?
Yeah, I was issued an M11 when it first was fielded.
I never owned one, but I shot several 226s. That's really the only one of that kind of series that I shot. I had a 230, which is a 380 gun. I just bought it from somebody because I got a good deal.
M11A1 is what, a 229, not a 226, right?
Is it a 229? But they basically the same platform, right? Like
same gun, yeah. Just shorter barrel.
Right. I always thought those things were really nice. I mean, of course, I never had.
No, they're nice. They're nice, but I like SIG pistols. I've never been a fan of SIG rifles. So
I still don't have a whole lot of trigger time on this new what is it, 350 or what is the new model that they adopted? I've shot it, but I haven't shot it much. So I am. And I don't really pay
M18 or whatever it is you have, or M18.
M17, yeah, M17. I'm just trying to remember what the civilian nomenclature for that is.
I think it's a 320. Pretty sure it's a 320. I don't know though.
Yeah, that could be it. Yeah, P320. Rick Duke Malta here for the win.
SIG first tried to enter the carbine market with the SIG, what would they call it, the 5.51 and 5.52, and the American law enforcement market jumped right on it because they had great initial numbers, and then they found that they were absolutely inaccurate under combat conditions. So, it's a great bench platform, not a great field platform. So
that was the European one it's completely different than AR platform, right? That was the
yes, but it was fielded heavily by American law enforcement as well.
Yeah, my brother bought, I think it was the 5.56, which they took that upper receiver and made an AR style lower to go with it instead of the European lower. And I think my brother had one of those. Yeah, Silver Tree, you got it. Mark 48 was a 7.62 version of the saw. Yeah, 100%. All right. Anyway, let's move on here. Talking more about Russia and Russia. Let's be honest. Russia is the only country in the world that really has a significant nuclear advantage over the United States. And to remind people of that, I believe Russia's Putin. This is always interesting. It's like they love to say this is Putin did it, right? I mean, can't the country of Russia do it, or is it kind of like everything
Putin's
Russia
unlawful war on Ukraine?
Right. Anyway, Russia's Putin launches drill of nuclear forces simulating strikes. The exercise involved Russia's full nuclear triad of ground, sea, and air launch missiles. This is important, right? The triad has always kind of been seen as the gold standard for how to create a survivable nuclear platform or a kind of system of platforms. Russian President Vladimir Putin has launched an exercise of the country's nuclear forces featuring missiles launches and simultaneously a retaliatory strike amid soaring tensions with the West over Ukraine. Given the growing geopolitical tensions and the emergence of new external threats and risks, it is important to have modern, constantly ready-to-use strategic forces. Well, I guess since Putin's directly commenting on it, it kind of makes a little more sense, versus some sort of, bellicose headline that just wants to blame Putin for everything. In televised comments, Minister of Defense Andrei Belousov told Putin that the purpose of the drill was to practice delivering a massive nuclear strike by strategic offensive forces in response to a nuclear strike by the enemy. The exercise involved Russia's full nuclear triad of ground, sea, and air launch missiles. So, if you're not familiar with the term nuclear triad, you basically have land-based weapons. Those would be your ICBMs and silos, or in the case of Russia, portable launchers. Then you've got submarine-launched ballistic missiles, which are at sea. And then you've got air-launched weapons, which could be either nuclear cruise missiles or bombs. Or in the case of, Russia specifically, they could have a hypersonic, missiles as well. The exercise of a Yars intercontinental ballistic missile was launched from the Pulevsky Cosmodrome in northwest Russia to Kamchatka, a peninsula in the Far East. Sinev and Bulava ballistic missiles were fired from submarines, and cruise missiles were launched from strategic bomber planes, the Defense Ministry said. The missile exercise took place at a critical moment in the Russia-Ukraine war after the weeks of Russian signals to the West that Moscow would respond if the United States and its allies were to allow Kiev to fire longer-range missiles deep into Russia. Now it makes a little more sense. I mean, this within that context. And then, Joe, the other side of that is we've heard a lot of rumblings about a potential ceasefire or kind of a de-escalation of conflict recently.
I have not heard that, but this would be a good warning. Like, hey, there is a red line that you can cross. That I'm going to respond and look. By the way, my stuff works. So,
well, Joe, after Russia sank all of the Ukrainian ships in the Black Sea, like in one day, don't you remember Zelensky was like, "Hey, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't attack each other's shipping and oil infrastructure."
This came after Zelensky spent 5 weeks attacking Russia's oil infrastructure.
Exactly right. And the other side of that too is that he's been talking about this victory plan, but evidently his victory plan was essentially down the victory toilet.
His victory plan is to have NATO enter the war on his side and game over. But that would also mean game over for literally everyone on the planet. So,
yeah. Since the start of the war, Russia has sent a series of pointed signals to the West, shifting Russia's stance on major nuclear treaties and announcing the deployment of tactical nuclear missiles to neighboring Belarus. Ukraine has accused Putin of nuclear blackmail. NATO says it will not be intimidated by Russian threats, yet NATO will still not deploy directly to Ukraine. So it is therefore intimidated by Russian threats.
Every country that has nuclear weapons is guilty of nuclear blackmail at some level, because that's the entire point of having nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Bend others to your will.
It is. I mean, you're literally doing nuclear weapons wrong if you're not intimidating other people. Oh, hey, we have these nukes. Don't worry about them. We're just going to keep them in a bunker. We're not targeting them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just their existence is intimidating. And if you're not intimidated, then you got screws loose. Under the changes, Russia would consider any assault on it. It's supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack, a warning to the United States not to help Ukraine strike deep into Russia with conventional weapons. Putin has said that Russia does not need to resort to the use of nuclear weapons to achieve victory in Ukraine. Russia is the world's largest nuclear power. U.S. officials say that it has seen no change to Russia's nuclear deployment posture during the war. Together, Russia and the U.S. control 88% of the world's nuclear warheads. In 2022, the United States grew so concerned about Russian possible use of tactical nuclear weapons that it warned Putin about the consequences to CIA director. Consequences to Director CIA Bill Burns. All right. So basically the CIA director warned, Russia. Okay. Anyway, I thought that was interesting timing on that with the whole nuclear drill. But good news, guys. Ukraine has something to offset the nuclear drills. Ukraine in new mobilization drive. So you remember all those roundups and churches and in the middle of, well, now we know where they got all those soldiers for this new mobilization. Go to war or go to jail, I guess. Or go to war or go to war, essentially is what it is. This is a BBC's story. Ukraine is planning to draft another 160,000 troops to its military. And if I remember correctly, Joe, the average time between coming off the street and hitting the front lines is less than 30 days.
Well, it is now. We did try that experiment of training them
Yeah, I don't think most of those guys survived. You're breaking up a little bit. Yeah, I've got the negative.
Really nothing I could do about it.
Yeah, I know. I just want to letting you know so you're not, you're not screaming into the void.
I mean, what I said was that there was that we tried training them in the UK, but they don't want to be trained by anybody, right? They kind of have this superiority, a national superiority complex that they don't want to be trained by anybody. So fine, conscript them, send them out to the front in less than 30 days. Let's see how that goes.
We brought Ukrainian
I've
infantry.
heard similar reports.
Yeah, we brought Ukrainian infantry guys to train in Grafenwehr, and they were complaining. They wanted us to use maps and compasses. What? I've got an iPad. What do I need a map and compass for? All right. Russia has been advancing in the eastern Donetsk region on Tuesday. Said it had fully captured the mining town of Selidov. It comes amid report of a number of North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia. Ukraine's military has been under severe pressure lately. And this is a true statement, right? And it's good the BBC is actually reporting on this kind of stuff. Severe pressure, in part due to Russia's greater manpower and deeper resources, which is something we've been saying from the beginning. Russia just has a much greater pool of people to kind of, and they use their people to gain advantage, for that, because every time they kill a Ukrainian person, there's still 3 Russians for that one guy they kill. So if they lose 2 Ukrainians to 1, or 2 Russian to 1 Ukrainian, they're still staying ahead. There's no plans to call up more than 160,000 people. The AFP news agency reports the recruitment will take place over the next 3 months. So this is not something that is going to happen just immediately. And then they'll piecemeal them into the line, and ultimately it probably won't come to much of an advantage.
Their recruitment will begin as soon as they can get enough hickory sticks and zip ties to effectively recruit people.
Exactly right. Hickory stick. The U.S. said on Tuesday...
It's literally 1800s level of press ganging.
Yeah, press ganging. It's exactly right. And the sad thing is that these are, the guys that they're bringing in are not like young boys who are kind of like, with no commitments. I mean, these are family men that are basically getting pulled out of their, house. They're supporting the wife and kids. And, sorry, dad's got to go to war. No more, no more job for him. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to abuse him while he's there, and he's just going to die one day, and you'll never hear anything else from him again. The U.S. said on Tuesday,
it's worth noting that any young lad who had the ability and the physical skills to get out of the country already did.
Oh yeah. Well, the interesting thing is they're talking about the deporting illegal Ukrainian male immigrants that are military age back to Ukraine. These are from some places in the EU talking about doing this. I think that's pretty interesting, considering the liberal.
All those countries who want to give asylum to everyone won't give it to Ukrainians.
Right? Back to the meat grinder for you. The U.S. said on Tuesday a small number of North Korean troops have been sent to Kursk. A couple thousand or more are heading there, it said. South Korea has claimed that the troops are being trained in various locations, with many wearing Russian uniforms in order to disguise themselves. A high-level government official said they believe that up to 11,000 of the soldiers had already been sent to Russia, with at least 3,000 in the west of the country.
I'll point out the obvious. Putting a Russian uniform on a Korean guy does not a Russian make. He's not exactly going to be blending in, right?
Yeah, I mean, even the whole idea of making it look like they came from, Siberia or some of those areas in the east is only going to be paper thin once they all start talking Korean to each other. When the Baofeng starts going off in the Ukrainian trenches and you start hearing Kamsamnida and things like that over your radio, then the North Koreans are in the.
I really don't think that's the exact word they're going to use over the radio, but yes.
I see the enemy, sir. Oh, Kamsamnida.
well done, Chomaneo.
Well, let's go shoot at him. Yegasimnida. Actually, Yegasimnida is something you would hear him say. All right. The latest mobilization comes after Ukraine's parliament passed legislation in April to help mobilize troops to fight invading forces. The law requires every man aged between 25 and 60 to log their details onto an electronic database so they can be called up. Conscription officers are on the hunt for those avoiding the register, pushing more men who do not want to serve into hiding. The measure is aimed at boosting numbers in the military, which is under severe pressure as Russia continues to make gains in the east. Moscow has announced that it now controls all of Selidov in the Donetsk region, as well as surrounding villages, as it focused on the city of Pokrovsk, which is that kind of logistics transportation hub that we've been talking about for the last month. So
all I heard you say was pork roastsville or something like that. So yes, that's an important town.
Pokrovska? Is that not how you say it?
I don't know. I can't see it. I'm just listening. It sounded like you said pot roastville. I'm down for that.
Hey man, pot roast is good for me too. I always think of like pork belly when I see that word, but tomato. All right. I think that is all of my Russia stuff. Let's jump into the election heating up, guys, because this is actually a good Ukraine to U.S. election transition story here. You'll know it when you see it. But before I get into that, let me catch up with some of these super chats here. All right. Peter says helicopter tours for $2 says, regarding an odds and ends story, YouTube censored this question. Is there any way to get Hezbollah or Hamas to name Bill Gates or Soros or think the next leader? I don't know. It doesn't surprise me that YouTube censored that.
That's the other way around. Bill Gates probably has a hand in who gets picked as the Hezbollah leader.
That's right. And whoever he names won't be happy about it, just like this current guy. Random PNW guy 84. I get the feel there's a lot of guys sitting around the table going, not it, right? When they start talking about who's going to be the next leader. Random PMW guy 84 for $2 says, so when do we have two types of small arms ammo have ever been smart for a logistics perspective? Hey, we got ammo in, guys. Oh, crap, it's 5.56. I mean, that's the whole point of like having NATO standard ammo, right? That like, in a NATO environment that you can essentially use ammo from any other country,
Now, Scott, I hate to contradict you, but I have to say that I think it's probably nose goes.
What are we talking about?
Well, they all just, the new Hezbollah guys, they all just sit around a table and one of them slowly puts his finger on his nose and suddenly everybody else figures out what's going on. And the last one to figure out that you got to put your finger on your nose.
Well, that's what I just did. You didn't see me? I put my finger on my nose.
Oh, no. Sorry. I wasn't looking at the camera at the time.
Yeah. It was not it. Though, great minds think alike, Watcher. Joe, any thoughts on this question here? I think you had a connection thing there.
I thought it was me.
Oh, maybe it's me. I don't know. All right, moving on to the next super chat. Peter says helicopter tours for $5 says the father of one of the famous lawyers targeting Trump. Oh, I just heard Joe again.
Nope.
There he is. I just heard you say nope, Joe.
Yeah, because nope, you didn't hear me say anything.
Oh, okay. Peter says helicopter tours for $5 says the father of one of the famous lawyers targeting Trump was responsible for purposely using crappy powder in the initial 5.56 introduction of the M16 to sink it. They wanted to keep the import going.
Is that the one who decided that even though the M16 is designed to be self-cleaning, if you use granular powder, that we were going to use bar and granular? Because soccer logic.
I don't know. That was before my time.
Yeah, I wasn't in the Air Force when they initially selected the XM16. All right, let's move on. So this story is, like I said, has a nice connection to the Ukraine saga, but also is part of the current domestic environment. Mauda wheels out neocon Nuland to declare Russia is interfering in the 2024 election because, of course, they are. And if anybody's got credibility, it's got to be Nuland, right? I mean, she's
especially when it comes to Russia.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, let's be honest. She doesn't.
I thought she was too busy. I thought she was too busy in Georgia organizing new protests to comment. But glad to hear she's still out there.
Yeah, I saw a post that you did the other day, and I literally I didn't post it, but I had the same thought when I saw the news. I was like, all right, where's Nuland at? And of course, and you had posted the same thing. That was, a lot of similarities in what they're doing in Georgia.
I bet she's in Tbilisi. Yeah.
All right. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow can't let an election go by without wheeling out the usual cadre of tired old neocons, with the latest to appear on her show being former State Department official Victoria Nuland. As expected, she sought to lump Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Vladimir Putin together in a segment on disinformation this week. Like I said a couple of weeks back, if they're talking about disinformation, it probably is disinformation. He's at it again, Nuland claimed of Putin, resurrecting talking points heavily featured in the prior two elections as well. She accused Musk of being, in essence, a useful idiot for the Kremlin, allowing Putin to use sophisticated tools on his X platform. Joe, what would have been a way better criticism of Musk would be to say that he's a Chinese puppet, because of all the investment in China that he's done with Tesla to sell the cars over there. That would have been a better hit on.
Yeah, but their Chinese masters would have been very mad at them if they did that.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree.
You're right. We're on the same page with that one then. Okay. Anyway, says allowing Putin to use sophisticated tools on his X platform to interfere and influence voters. And he has more sophisticated tools. He's got a brand new, very powerful tool, which is Elon Musk and X, Newland claimed of Putin and by extension Trump, according to her talking points. They are saying that this new sophisticated and powerful tool, guys, is freedom of speech, right? Actually being able to express an opinion without being censored by the government or a social media platform. But let's be honest, even X is not perfect on that stuff. It's just way better than the others.
This is slightly off topic, but still Newland related. There's a lesson for young men as they're making decisions about their life in Victoria Newland. I challenge you, if you're a young guy, to Google a photo of Victoria Newland from 25 years ago, and then look at her today. Boys, make good choices. Make good choices. Anyway, carry on.
That's Joe. That's one of those kind of like lessons on pictures can show the existence of evil in people because the way they look.
Yes.
Over time.
What it does to their bodies and their faces and their appearance. Yes.
In 2020, the social media companies work hard with the U.S. This is her talking. This is Newland talking here. Worked hard with the U.S. government to try to do content moderation, i.e. censorship, to try to catch all this stuff as it was happening, like the Hunter Biden laptop and all the intel people coming out and saying this is a Russian disinformation. And 1 in 4 people said that if they had known about the Hunter Biden laptop, they would have voted the other way, right? Which would have given Trump so that one thing, the Hunter Biden laptop alone, I think, just goes to show how Trump was cheated. That's just one of many examples. Let's see. This time we have Elon Musk talking directly to the Kremlin and ensuring that every time the Russians put something out, it gets 5 million views before anyone can catch it. Newland continued, and then she warned, Trump is taking Putin lessons as autocrats are all around the world. I mean, this is like, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't surprise me she's being platformed on MSNBC.
What's crazy is that they say Putin's an autocrat, Trump's going to be one too. So guess what? We should be autocrats first and limit what everyone can say. The ultimate end state of the disinformation game is the elimination of your right to free speech.
Yeah, this is exactly true. And anybody who says that that the other side is a Nazi probably has more in common with a Nazi than the people they're criticizing.
They can trot out Roz from Monsters Inc. all they want. That's still the end goal.
Let's see. For the United States to not be the leader of the free world, but rather in effectively sort of an axis with dictators of Russia, China, and North Korea. So clearly Maddow wanted to escalate the claims to put Trump in league with all the dictators of the world, absurdly enough. For the United States to be allied with those countries instead of our traditional alliances, I'm not sure people have absorbed the magnitude of what you're describing here. And this kind of goes to the whole idea, Joe, that we've talked about at length in the past, where the American first idea, runs counter to this whole idea of we have to get involved in everybody's business, right? And to the extent that Russia doesn't want us getting involved in their business, people are trying to draw parallels that instead of just supporting our interests, they're saying, oh, in doing that, we're also supporting Russia. Which is,
from 2016 to 2020, the world's dictators didn't rattle their sabers, and then they did all of a sudden, and rather vociferously. Right. What changed?
It's funny how that worked. Yeah, exactly right. It's funny how that worked. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Newland anymore. She makes me upset. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of point this one out. I thought it had a good Russia / Ukrainian overlap to bring us into the election. So I don't know if you guys saw, but we talked on Monday a little bit about that Madison Square Garden event and, the rock star lineup of conservative speakers. And one of the guys was a was a comedian. The guy who runs the Kill Tony show. What's his Tim Hedge? I can't remember his name. Anyway, the guy from Kill Tony opened up and he had that joke about the Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico is there's a island of garbage in the middle of the ocean. It's called Puerto Rico, right? And then so literally all the political guys, they didn't get commented on, right? Nobody talked about Trump's speech or all these other speeches. They talked about the one joke that the comedian said in these kind of vile comments, right?
The best thing about comedy is that usually to be funny, you just tell the truth.
Well, I mean, let's down. I don't want to start casting aspersions because I'm no comedian.
Have you been to Puerto Rico?
I have. I mean, come on now.
The same.
Don't get me into trouble, brother. Anyway, I'm already in trouble. So it's the only thing that makes it even better than a comedian on the same bill as Donald Trump saying that one island with territory of the United States is garbage, is when on the day that Kamala is supposed to have her big kind of closing argument speech, in D.C., President Biden comes right out and says, not only are they garbage, but all of his supporters are garbage. So this is, let's see, let me play the clip here. It's there we go. I want to get these clips right. Watcher, I have a lot of respect for your kind of your bouncing your screen share game here. All right, here we go.
Appreciate that.
This is old POTUS here.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
All 80 million of them? Now, how many people could be in Puerto Rico? I mean, that's 80 million versus the population of. I mean, I feel pretty. He's calling us garbage, right? This is the president of the United States thinks we're garbage. Let me play that again.
I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
And of course, it's something that Trump did not say.
My only question about this is
or Puerto Rico
is this a gaffe or like a legit he let it slip, or is this him legitimately sabotaging, doing basically another deplorables comment, knowing the kind of reaction the last one got?
Well, I've always said that I think Joe Biden is a little passive aggressive, in support of Kamala, and sometimes the support doesn't seem like it. It's not as obvious now. So evidently this came out while Trump was live, and so this is Trump's response. I mean, literally, I think it was Marco Rubio came out on stage and handed the quote to President Trump here.
So remember Hillary, she said deplorable, and then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable. That didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right?
Garbage, I think, is worse. Yeah, it is worse. I
couldn't hear it, so I don't know.
Yeah. He said Hillary said deplorables, but now garbage. I think garbage is Hillary. You remember Hillary? She said deplorables. Garbage, I think, is worse. So that doesn't surprise me. So,
like I said, this makes a lot more sense when you understand that their goal is no longer to win votes, and their goal is to stoke violence between the two sides. It makes more sense that way.
Well, right. You have to dehumanize people before it's easier to do violence against them, right? If somebody's garbage versus an actual person, then it's just taking out the garbage.
The good news is commies are not people.
Yeah, we've been dehumanizing the commies for a long time. So, so this is Vice President Harris had a comment in response to this garbage talk.
Type of leader I intend to be.
Have you spoken to President Biden since his comment last night about garbage?
Listen, I think that, first of all, he clarified his comments, but...
Can you guys hear it?
I can hear it.
Okay, because Joe said he couldn't hear it earlier. Joe, can you hear it?
Nope, but I didn't get to hear our really sweet intro either, so it'll be all right.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyways, this is basically Kamala Harris responding to Biden's garbage talk.
Let me be clear. I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for. You heard my speech last night and continuously throughout my career. I believe that the work that I do is about representing all the people, whether they support me or not. And as President of the United States, I will be a president for all Americans, whether you vote for me or not. That is my responsibility, and that's the kind of work that I've done my entire career, and I take it very seriously.
Have you spoken to him about his comments and his
he did call me last night, but this didn't come up.
Are you concerned about what impact this may have on voters, on the divisiveness of the election, and whether or not it's going to dissuade some people from supporting you because of your affiliation with the president and this administration?
I've been very clear with the American public. I respect the challenges that people face. I respect the fact that we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and that most
Holy
people
hell,
want
what a
president
tone
that
shift.
understands that gets that, and approaches their role of leadership.
Say again.
I said, holy hell, what a tone shift.
I know, right? And then so I like this because this kind of responds directly to what she just said with her own words. While Democrats want to ban assault rifles, extremist MAGA Republicans try to ban books. MAGA extremists dare to tell us what is in our own best interest. Will I trust the women of America to make decisions about their own bodies? MAGA extremists. So, I mean, clearly they continue to say these things, like calling MAGA supporters extremists, right? I mean, this is all that week leading up to that, and even the couple days afterwards, all you also heard about was the comparison to the Nazi event in Madison Square Garden, not a comparison to any other presidential events that have occurred there.
Actually, she said neo-Nazi event in 1939, and they were not neo-Nazis; they were literal Nazis. But
yeah, literal Nazis.
Also, if there was ever anything that I'd be okay with people being extreme about, it's about making America great again. I don't understand why MAGA extremist is supposed to be a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. I told people this in a Bible study last night. When they call you a Christian extremist, thank them and say absolutely, because it's either yes or no. It is not varying shades of anything.
Yeah. I don't remember if it was Franklin or Jefferson who said extremity in defense of liberty is no vice.
It's kind of ironic that they're really piling on, like all over the mainstream news media, basically CNN and MSNBC. They were talking about these deplorable comments or reprehensible comments, and they're basically literally talking about one joke. This is interesting because this is a clip of what Jon Stewart said about this joke, right? Because when Jon Stewart's not on the same side as you, you're into kind of extreme territory here. So let me share this real quick. Because let's remember, this is a guy who was a comedian, not a pundit.
Raise the alarms.
The opening act, grabbing headlines for all the wrong reasons. A comedian who offered unfunny, racist, cringeworthy jokes.
Basically calling Puerto Ricans trash.
The most repulsive racial jokes about Latinos.
Disgusting and hateful.
So incredibly crude.
Frankly, just too X-rated to play here.
Extremely vile so-called jokes.
Extremely vile so-called jokes. She name-checked my comedy album from the 90s. Did I really?
Part of me thinks that's a real comedy album.
I don't know who's AI, me or that guy. Now, obviously, in retrospect, having a roast comedian come to a political rally a week before Election Day and roasting a key voting demographic, probably not the best decision by the campaign politically. But to be fair, the guy's really just doing what he does. I mean, here he is at the Tom Brady roast a few months ago.
The great Jeff Ross, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff is so Jewish, he only watches football for the coin toss. Gronk, you look like the Nazi that kept burning himself on the ovens. Kevin is so small that when his ancestors picked cotton, they called it deadlifting.
Yes, of course. Terrible, boo, yes.
Anyway, so like, you know, when you can't get Jon Stewart on your side, then you know you're kind of it's kind of like what Milton Root says here. They're trying so hard to make this a thing, and it's just not a thing. You saw those
comedy is supposed to push boundaries. Comedy is supposed to be
100%.
somewhat offensive to draw you into the conversation, right?
Well, you know, actually, Jon Stewart made a good point in his thing where he said, listen, maybe having a roast comedian is not the kind of, you know, smart political decision that you make, you know, for a big rally like this. Okay, I get that, right? I mean, that is an arguable point. But sitting there and saying that these are vile racist jokes because he's, you know, busting on people I don't know. This is everything that's wrong about the modern left.
Puerto Rico is a place. It is not a race.
100%. Well, but they weren't just talking about that one. They were talking about some other jokes too, but they're a little more subtle, so it doesn't land as hard. It's kind of like, you know, that one was the one where he literally said Puerto Rico equals garbage, right? That's the way they're selling it. And if you can't get that to stick, then you can't get anything to stick. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly right. Yarding boy, $2 Canadian. Thanks for nothing. I'm just kidding. It's comedy. Only the jester can make fun of the king. Yeah, that's exactly right. And if I remember correctly, Tony made fun of Trump a little bit in there too. So anyway, I just thought this was funny, and it's, you know, it shows you where we are in American politics, where this is what they kind of latch onto. Now, Joe, I mentioned the event that Kamala was doing outside the White House. This is her kind of final, you know, argument to the American people about why they should vote for her. So this is a Twitter post or X post from Tony Segura. He says, GPS, 31,834 mobile devices.
Hold on. I'm going to stop you right there. If you said Tony Segura when you told me this story the first time, I would have told you don't associate us with that.
But here's my thing is I don't think that anything he says here is debatable.
When he says our data, there is no data. He's not, and he doesn't have a company.
Well, he's not what he's talking about is other people's data. He's basically claiming other people's research as his own, which is exactly what he does.
But he's a clown. He's literally a clown.
I agree. But let's look at the data, and then, because I think this totally tracks. And I saw it one other place, but I found his post before I could find the other one. Let's see, 31,834 mobile devices at the Eclipse in Washington, D.C. for a Kamala Harris rally. 91% of these have attended 3 or more Harris rallies. Interestingly, over 11,000 were from Atlanta, Georgia, followed by 6,500 from California. Using Antifa, BLM, pro-Palestinian overlays, 6,122 were linked to 3 or more Antifa, BLM, pro-Palestinian riots. This absolutely tracks with everything that you've been saying, Joe, from the beginning about how, you know, BLM, pro-Palestine, Antifa, they're all one and the same. And there's basically a AstroTurf movement to try to show that there's really any on the ground support for these leftist causes.
Watch them shift this weekend to Donald Trump is very pro-Israel, and therefore he will worsen the conflict that we just worsened, right?
Right.
They're going to make it Donald Trump's fault, and therefore then begin to mobilize these people.
Right.
I'm going to disagree with one of our friends here and say that there haven't been riots and things, not because they're not organizing and they've lost steam, but because it's not popular right now due to who is in office and who is trying to get back in office. Once it becomes apparent that that's not going to happen, the gloves will come off.
Jim tells you, member for 14 months, says nobody cared about George Lopez saying all Mexicans were thieves the day before at a Harris event. The double standard is so blatant, everybody sees it. Yeah, this is exactly right. And Joe, I mean, so this is another interesting data point. So this is a guy at the rally there, and I want to just kind of play some of what he says here, and I'll tell you what he says afterwards, Joe, so you can hear.
Outside Kamala's ellipse rally here in DC. And literally, the whole crowd going back in the ellipse are just like free Palestine Jew haters. Take a look. It's your whole crowd. I kid you not, your whole crowd. It's the whole crowd. See, I don't know.
So basically, he's saying that a big majority of the crowd are a bunch of pro-Palestinian Jew haters. And they were chanting Intifada revolution in the background. I mean, Joe, this absolutely scans with what we've seen. Like,
whose rally sounded more like a neo-Nazi rally?
Exactly. And oh, by the way, the Madison Square Garden rally had Israeli flags all over it. There were like at least 4 or 5 Israeli flags in one picture alone.
Yeah.
Peter says helicopter tours for $2. Says, did you see the Harris rally crowd openly chanting death to Israel last night? Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. It's like a Hamas caucus wanted to make their intentions clear. Yeah, just so you guys know, we want the end of Israel. Let's see.
And I'll guarantee you there were people wearing Hamas patches and carrying Hezbollah flags at it.
And they have got the scarves and all the head scarves and all that kind of stuff. Yarded Boy says, I disagree, Scott. It's outrage enthusiasts, outraged by Palestine, outraged by BLM, just outraged for their So that's the kind of the young part. It's like they don't know what to really focus on, so they let other people tell them what to be outraged at, right? It's this whole kind of like getting the, I hate to say it, but it's that dopamine rush from people like
but it's actually important too. It's the psychological justification for violence. I'm not violent if I support Kamala Harris's policies. I am violent if I am outraged at what Donald Trump is going to do. It's a very important psychological distinction that proves that they're going for one outcome, not the other.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, Kamala Harris to deliver her closing speech in the D.C. National Mall directly where the KKK rallied in 1924. So this is giving me vibes of the KKK, the Democratic KKK rally, before the Nazi rally. Anyway, I just think it's kind of interesting to see, just how different, the two sides are.
But once again, she gave a speech that was zero of her own policies and all but Trump and what Donald Trump is going to do, right? He's going to put y'all back in chains all over again.
Well, don't worry. Good news, because the State Department alerts Congress that Iranian spy teams are attempting to assassinate former Trump officials in the United States.
That's cover for action. That is entirely cover for action.
It's exactly right. I mean, it makes me wonder if the security business is which side of this are they on? Right? Are they the Iranian assassination attempts? Let's see, the Washington Free Beacon. And by the way, cover for action is where they say one thing is a threat, but then that allows them to have cover for the action that they want to do behind the scenes. And then, of course, you provide some nice dead patsies on site. And then
you leave a dead guy named Zahid. You leave him behind, and you do what you need to do.
Ali and Zahid, right? Two Persian Americans who they were not on our radar. It's because they were just taxi drivers until yesterday. The State Department to congressional leaders last week about Iranian spies actively hunting and planning assassination attempts on 2 or more senior officials of the Trump administration. Now, the interesting thing here is I'm not too worried about the people that they name here. Which makes me feel like these guys are probably safe. It's probably other people who would be.
Adam isn't one of them, is he? Adam K, who's in our chat group.
No,
Okay.
it's the notification which State Department transmitted to congressional leaders last week reveals that Pompeo and former U.S. Iran envoy Brian Hook continue to face serious and credible threats from foreign nationals. Reported to be Iran, a foreign nation.
It's okay though, because a guy very publicly on Twitter got in a very long argument with me about the fact that he works for the CIA, and it was not Ron, by the way, that he works for the CIA, and he can assure me the CIA would never harm an American in America. So we're all good.
All right. Findings come on the eve of a contested presidential election. Yeah, CIA would never do that, Joe. Come on now. Don't be led down the primrose path by some conspiracy theorists. Come on. Iran's plots to assassinate former President Donald Trump have taken center stage in recent weeks. Trump was briefed late last month about real and specific threats from Iran to assassinate him in an effort to destabilize and sow chaos in the United States, according to this campaign. The non-public notice did not describe Tehran's assassination. But now, let's be honest. If anybody had a reason to, if Iran had a reason to assassinate anybody in the United States, it would be Trump, because he's literally dealt blows to them, very specifically with the assassination of what was the name?
Soleimani.
And the IRGC. So
Soleimani. I've said it like 4 times.
No, I heard you the first time. Some say that Israel, may have taken a page out of Trump's book when it came to Hamas and Hezbollah.
You know what's funny is that the sleight of hand that just happened there is, they said about Iran's assassination plots on Donald Trump. They just passed off all these assassination attempts that have happened on Donald Trump on Iran.
Right.
Even though they clearly were not Iranian directed.
Yeah, if anything, they're literally the opposite of Iranian. Let's see. Former President Trump wrote on X last month that there were big threats on my life by Iran, and moves were already made by Iran that didn't work out, but they will try again. Not a good situation for anyone. I'm surrounded by more men, guns, and weapons than I ever have been before. And in March, we reported that the FBI investigation, Miami field office, new details about Iranian intelligence officer by the name of Majid Dashtani running amok in the U.S. Running amok. Meanwhile, Biden, I think he's the guy we saw on the border, right? That it was like name dropping, various people. And giving kind of credible threats while he was coming across the border. While Biden-Harris administration has kept much of the chaos concealed from the public because it's an election year, you would make it. You wouldn't want to boost Donald Trump with your own information, which would make for optically displeasing headlines. Yet the disastrous open southern border policies that flooded the nation with murders, criminals, gangs, and terrorists, which everybody knows about. All right, I thought that was Iranian spy teams. I figured you'd get a kick out of that one, Joe. And we talked a little bit last week about, was it last week or was it on Monday? I can't remember. But anyway, they got the cartel, it was Monday. Kind of getting was 19 dead in a Sinaloa related fight. Trump to unleash financial Armageddon on Mexican drug cartels. If he, we will be seizing assets. I mean, I don't know if the Mexican drug cartels. They probably have a lot of assets. I guess now that I think about it, they probably do have a lot of assets inside the U.S. But it's probably hidden pretty well, I would assume.
It's all in cash or converted to gift cards and shipped overseas. But I will point out, as I am wont to do, that civil asset forfeiture is theft.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's that is. It's kind of like the right thing, done in the absolutely wrong way, right? The idea is
just because they're stealing from guys we don't like doesn't mean they're not stealing.
Right. The problem is that the civil asset forfeiture isn't connected to a specific, crime or indictment or conviction like it should be. It's literally like, oh, pull a guy over. Oh, you got $10,000 in your pocket? Give me that money. I think you're doing something suspicious with it.
Yeah, and you have to then prove the lawful ownership of that money.
Exactly right.
And
yeah, where's your receipt for it?
Never have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I get it. People wanting to do the right thing the wrong ways, but at the same time, it leads to that slippery slope, right?
This is that Bukele argument, right? Yeah, he smoked all those people, but look at what it did, right? Look at the damage to freedoms. So
well, yeah, with him, it's not so much killing the gang members; it's just locking them up with very little.
Well, no. I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is Bukele, in order to make it all legal, sending armed men to point guns at legislators to get them to vote his way. That's a problem. That's the problem I have with Bukele. So
Jake Clark kind of succinctly says it's an end run about due process. Yeah, I mean you gotta have due process, right? And that's
exactly. It's like a high risk protection order, right?
Well, and it's like the red flag laws, right? I mean, you can make a great argument that a certain guy shouldn't have a gun for reasons, right? But the problem is you have to clearly articulate those reasons and have him be able to address those directly. Now, like if somebody's loony for cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs or something like that, yeah, maybe I don't want that guy to have a gun. But you can't just go to his house and take his guns away and say, you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, we're taking your guns, right? Because you're a veteran and you got PTSD. It says right here on the sheet that they gave me, so I'm taking your guns. No, you have to go to court. There has to be a hearing. You have to have due process in order to do something in a legal way, right? That's the problem with
I think he's crazy because he's afraid the government's going to come. I think he's crazy because he thinks the government's going to come and take his guns away. So we better send the government to go and take his guns away.
Exactly right. Well, I mean, that's just it, Joe. I mean, like a wrong opinion does not crazy make someone, right? Just because somebody believes in flat Earth doesn't make them crazy. Now, if they, are violent or they are
no, that one makes them crazy.
No, that's a crazy idea. I'm just saying, just because you have a crazy idea in your head doesn't mean you are a crazy person. Anyway, let's see. Former president reportedly told allies earlier this year that he would be covertly deploying Tier 1. Now, see, this is the part about this that I do like, because I think he's basically Sicarioing these guys versus civil asset forfeiture in the U.S. Tier 1 U.S. Special Forces operations to Mexico to wipe out the drug cartel leadership if he returns to office. Yeah, he saw Sicario. He's like, that's cool. Why are we doing that?
Steve Stratton unavailable for comment, right?
Right. Command and control centers of cartels with guns blazing and may not be the proper strategy to dismantle these criminal organizations, but it also may be the proper way to do it. So, don't knock it till you try it. I'm announcing for the first time under my administration
it's literally the only way
to defeat an insurgency.
It's literally the only way you're ever going to end them.
Yeah, because they're basically terrorists. They are terrorists who fund their stuff through these illegal activities. This is a quote from Trump here. He said, "I'm announcing for the first time under my administration, we'll be seizing the assets of criminal gangs and drug cartels, and we will use those assets to create a compensation fund to provide restitution to victims of migrant crime," Trump said at a press conference on Tuesday at Mar-a-Lago. And then I guess that's the statement there. Trump's comments at Mar-a-Lago suggest if he wins in November, the U.S. Treasury Department may ramp up a financial war against violent Mexico-based drug trafficking cartel responsible for America's drug overdose catastrophe. Yeah, and then you've got the Jesus Christ, that's a lot.
This kind of strikes me as another time when Trump would have been better served by keeping his mouth shut, because this smacks of reparations. No,
yeah, reparations.
Yeah, it smacks of reparations by another name, right? I'm going to take the money from these people and give them to those people, and it just that shouldn't be to you. It just, I don't know. I think that the thought process is right. The methodology is wrong.
If you were to limit it only to funds seized within Mexico during your counterinsurgency against the drug cartels, then maybe I could get on board with it. But I get the feeling that there's going to be a lot of stuff seized in Texas that's going to go to that
again.
as well.
This is an example of me saying more government oppression is never the answer, right?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I don't disagree with that. Cartel act. So this is an interesting little heat map of cartel activity in Mexico in the year 2024. Let's see. Sinaloa cartels, the red areas here. So both ends of the country. Blue is the CJNG, and they've got a pretty clear territory there. Purple is disputed territory. So this is the irony about disputed territory, is that it's like literally you've got all kinds of people in there. Juarez cartel, of course, out of Ciudad Juarez. And then you've got the Northeastern cartel up here along and then you've got McAllen, where they've got the Gulf cartel. The Zetas really are not a thing anymore. They have basically splintered up and are now working for other different, cartels and whatnot. So interesting to just kind of see where all the bad guys are. And this just goes to show you that this is essentially a failed nation. Mexico is not any kind of a country that has anything going on anymore. Under a Trump presidency, international fentanyl trafficking could be declared a national emergency. This would allow Trump to sanction the hell out of drug cartels and their banks. This would enable Trump to confiscate and sanction property of fentanyl traffickers. And it's not just targeting Mexican banks where traffickers hide their money. Chinese banks could also be targets as well. Well, this is good that, because the Chinese connection for the fentanyl trade is one of the things that we have not successfully
until they target Hutchison ports. Until they target Hutchison ports and Hutchison Whampoa, it's not going to get any better. But I have a question for the Trump administration. Why now? Why did you not do it the last time?
Well, I mean, it's probably just awareness, They
weren't aware of something everyone else was aware of then?
I really didn't hear Trump talking about fentanyl that much,
Okay, but again, why?
I think, I just think it was probably
right.
No, I was just,
I'm not being anti-Trump here. I'm asking a legitimate question.
No, I get it. I mean,
why now, and why didn't we do this when we were in power?
Yeah, these are the right questions to ask, right? I hope we ask these questions after he is placed back in office. So it's one of those kind of things where we're working to get to a better solution versus just poking the people in charge. If Trump wins, expects illicit financial networks of the cartels and companies participating in the drug crisis scheme to be instant targets. Yeah, and it kind of goes into some background here about how many deaths there are. Anyway, I think this is pretty interesting. For me, the biggest kind of takeaway was this whole idea that deploying special operators to actually fight the cartels in Mexico. I think, Joe, this is one of those examples where we talked about actual legitimate uses of the military in overseas conflict. When somebody is targeting, killing 100,000 American citizens every year, you've got to respond aggressively.
Fighting in Mexico is not overseas conflict, just for the record.
Well, you know what I mean? I mean abroad, outside of the continental United States, or not continental United States, but the contiguous U.S.
As I have said repeatedly, 20-mile buffer zone.
Yeah, right. Along the, I'm just not sure how you make that work, but I don't disagree with it.
McCullough.
Machine guns and Mark 19s. Very simple.
McCullough. All right, gentlemen, that's all I got for the show today. Friday coming up, we will probably do all domestic stories. So, we're kind of in the home stretch going into the election. So hopefully we won't be talking about the election after on Wednesday. Hopefully we'll be celebrating. But I get the feeling that we're going to be talking about other things related to the election on Wednesday. Hopefully none of it will be domestic violence, but I'm hoping. I don't have any faith though that that'll be the case. Joe, looking towards the end of the week, and what do you think is going to happen with the election? I still think there's something to come. I got a bad feeling about it.
I think you're going to see more violence. I think we're going to see some violence happen over the weekend. We didn't mention it on here, but there have been incendiary devices. I mean, we did mention.
Oh, that's right.
Passing.
Yeah.
Placed in ballot boxes. There have been keys that have been stolen to ballot boxes. There were another 2,500 fraudulent voter apps found. They're going to do everything they can to muddy the waters here. So pay attention, keep your head on a swivel, and be alert to the potential for actual election day violence that's going to be made to look like something other than what it really is.
Yeah.
So that's my prediction. I won't be here Friday. I've got a class on Friday, so I'll join you all on Monday.
All right, we look forward to it. Joe, the easy way not to have those ballot boxes get firebombed, not to have ballot boxes like that.
Not have ballot boxes.
Yeah, I mean, ballot boxes are technically illegal in Michigan, but I know where at least 30 of them are.
Yep. These are a bad idea. They are basically cheater boxes. All right. Watcher?
Same thing. I mean, mostly I've been watching a lot of these domestic stories. I've been a little busy to be able to do much more research than that. But there's a lot of kind of some crazy whisperings on the margins about things going on in big blue cities. And I think that's where, if you have the ability, pay some attention.
The other thing that I'm looking at going into this weekend is, will any other countries decide to use the U.S. election as a kind of a cover for their own internal nefarious or potentially even external nefarious activities? So I don't know the answer to that, but I'm kind of curious to see what goes on there. So I'll be keeping my eye out on the international news just to see if anything kind of pops up. All right, gentlemen, that's all we've got for today. Thank you, chat. Thank you, Joe and Watcher. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, tell your friends about what we've got going on over here, and share the link on social media. If you would, after the show turns off, get on there on YouTube and on Rumble and make a comment. Let me know what you think is going to happen, if anything, in the last little bit before the end of the election. What politician next will come out and insult all of Trump's 80 million supporters? Good question. I don't know. So until Friday, that's all we've got. As always, stay safe, gents.